Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor, short with Martin Holland.
The Sword of Damocles. Hello, Cash Flow Contractors. This is Martin Holland, and welcome to this short episode in which I want to talk about an ancient story titled The Sword of Damocles. This past weekend, I had traveled out to see my daughter, and on my way back, due to my poor planning and ticket buying skills, I was stuck in the Denver airport for 6 hours. Luckily, there was a bookstore open, and I found a book by one of my favorite authors, Matt Ridley. I took the book back to the gate, sat down in my seat, opened it, and the epigraph below the very first chapter was a quote by Peter Drucker, who's known as the father of modern business management. His quote was this. He said, "Wherever you see a successful business, someone made a courageous decision." Now, I love Peter Drucker, and I love the quote, but I disagree with him in this instance. I think correctly expressed, the quote is, "Wherever you see a successful business, someone has made a bunch of courageous decisions." My wife, for example, comes to mind. She started a successful business 7 years ago, and I am constantly impressed by the courageous decisions she's made and continues to make, each of which was a tipping point in the survival and evolution of her business. Maybe I'll do a podcast and list the particulars of her decisions, but that's going to have to wait until I talk to her. But in any case, the Drucker quote brings us to the Sword of Damocles. As I said, it's an ancient parable that came down to us through a book written in 45 BC by the Roman senator and orator Cicero. I read somewhere that that's properly pronounced Cicero. I'm not sure that it matters, but I wanted to get that in there in case somebody knows how it's properly pronounced. The story is about the King Dionysius, who was a ruthless Dionysius II, who was a ruthless ruler of the city of Syracuse in Sicily. He ruled during the 4th and 5th century BCs. He was rich and supremely powerful, but he was also supremely unhappy. He had a lot of enemies, and he lived in constant fear of being assassinated. He was so concerned that he slept in a bedroom surrounded by a moat and allowed only his daughters to shave him. A court flatterer, now that's a job for you, named Damocles, showered Dionysius with compliments and remarked how blissful his life must be. Dionysius responded by asking, "Since this life delights you, perhaps you would like to taste it for yourself." "Hell yeah," said Damocles. The king seated Damocles on a golden chair and had his army of servants wait on him, a feast literally meant for a king. The servants presented him with perfumes and covered him with oil, which is something I never understood about antiquity. I don't know what the oil's all about. But anyway, the servants presented him with perfumes, covered him with oil, and served him only the best wine, finest meats, and fruits. But just as Damocles was beginning to really enjoy himself, he noticed that the king had also hung a sword above his head. The sword dangled there precariously suspended from the ceiling by a single hair of a horse's tail. From that point on, as you might imagine, fear for his life robbed the scent from the perfume and the flavor from the food and the thrill from being waited on. After a very short while, Damocles asked to be excused, allowing that he no longer wished to be so fortunate. So why am I bringing up a crusty story from 2,000 years ago? Well, first, because the story comes to my mind almost every day. Really, it does. And not as it affects me personally, although it has and does, but rather in appreciation and empathy for small business owners. The Sword of Damocles expresses exactly the reason I love small business owners as much as I do. They bear a constant burden of responsibility. They're seldom appreciated. They're often envied, but they're often alone, and often they have few resources beyond courage and determination to help them bear their constant load. The difference between a business owner, and Damocles is that business owners seldom have the option to bail out easily when they no longer wish to be so fortunate. The second reason, and the specific reason I'm bringing up the story now, is because of a conversation I had with a client a few weeks ago. This client has sat beneath the sword for over 30 years in her role as a business owner, and she's done it without the wine, feasts, servants, or trappings of fantastic wealth, although I do have to say that her business is currently growing like a weed. But in our conversation, she casually let it slip that she felt uncomfortable attending large conventions and trade shows. When I asked her why, she said all the big dogs in attendance were intimidating. I told her about this sword of Damocles and suggested she should be proud of her role as a business owner. Few of the big dogs in attendance at conventions and trade shows were ever business owners who had ever sat where she sits or had ever shouldered the responsibilities she faces every day. Why in the world should she be intimidated? I think the story helped her. If you're not a business owner, maybe the story helps you better understand why the boss is stressed and distracted at times. If you are now, or have ever been, seated beneath the sword, give yourself credit for your courage. It's kind of like the Marine Corps slogan, the few, the proud, the business owners. Some of us are watching and respect you for it. So yes, as Drucker says, wherever you see a successful business, someone has made a courageous decision, and that decision was to take a seat under the sword and to stay there. Going forward, there's little to do about the sword itself, but you can certainly improve your situation by transforming that thread into a chain or maybe even a cable through better management decisions. Helping you to do that is our purpose at the Cash Flow Contractor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.